Here's a credit card myth that cost Americans over $160 billion every single year, and nearly half of the people paying it don't even realize they're doing anything wrong. If you've ever been told that carrying a balance on your credit card helps your credit score, this video is for you because that belief is completely false, and it's quietly draining thousands of dollars from people who think they're being responsible. Today, I'm going to show you exactly where this myth came from, why banks love that people believe it, and what actually builds your credit score so you can stop paying interest for nothing. 48% of people believe this myth, which means nearly half of everyone using credit cards thinks it's true. What makes this so painful is that it's completely wrong, and because people believe it, they're voluntarily handing banks billions of dollars every year for absolutely nothing in return. Today, I want to walk through exactly how this myth works, why it costs so much money, and what's actually happening with your credit score when you use a credit card. Because once you understand this, you'll never look at credit cards the same way again. The belief itself goes like this. Building credit requires carrying a balance, showing the banks that you can handle debt responsibly by charging something to your card and then paying it off slowly over time while letting a little bit of interest accumulate each month. It sounds logical enough, like why would a bank trust you with credit if you've never actually used credit, and if you pay everything off immediately, how do they know you can manage debt? This is where the confusion starts. Because yes, you do need to use credit to build credit, but using credit and carrying debt are two completely different things. And somewhere along the way, those two ideas got tangled together in people's minds.
What actually happens is the credit bureau still see that you use the card when you charge something and pay it off in full by the due date. They see that you made a charge, they see that you paid it back on time, and that's all they need because that's building credit right there. Carrying a balance month to month doesn't build extra credit though. You're just paying interest, and the only person who benefits from that is the bank. Let me show you what this actually costs people in real numbers. Total credit card debt in the United States right now sits at over $1.2 trillion. 47% of credit card holders are carrying a balance, and in 2024 alone, consumers paid $160 billion in interest charges. Think about that number for a second, because $160 billion isn't money people spent on things they needed. It's just the cost of borrowing, the price of believing the myth. Interest rates make it even worse when you look at them closely. Credit cards right now average around 22% APR, and some cards, especially store cards, are charging over 31%. Which are the highest rates we've seen in decades. Let's say you have the average credit card balance, which comes in at about $6,500, and you're paying the minimum payment each month like a lot of people do because they think they're being responsible and building credit. Paying only the minimum on that balance means it'll take you 170 months to pay it off, which is 14 years. And during those 14 years, you'll pay over $6,400 in interest, almost as much as the original debt itself. You borrowed $6,500 and paid back $13,000. Here's where it gets even more frustrating because minimum payments work in a way most people don't really understand until someone breaks it down for them. A $1,000 balance on a card with 18% interest might have a minimum payment of $25, which seems manageable enough. But here's the breakdown. Out of that $25 payment, $15 goes to interest, and only $10 actually pays down what you owe. After a full year of making those $25 payments every single month, you still owe almost $900. And this is by design because the banks structure minimum payments so that you stay in debt as long as possible. The longer you're in debt, the more interest you pay. And interest is where they make their money, since 80% of credit card profitability comes from interest charges, not from the fees they charge merchants when you swipe your card, not from annual fees, just straight-up interest from people carrying balances. Let's go back to the credit score thing because I want to make sure this is crystal clear about what actually matters. Your credit score is made up of 5 main factors, and the biggest one is payment history at 35% of your score, which is just whether or not you pay your bills on time. Credit utilization is the second biggest factor at 30% of your score, representing the percentage of your available credit that you're actually using. And here's the key part. Lower is better because you want to keep this under 30%. Length of credit history, credit mix, and new credit make up the rest of your score.
Notice what's not on that list? Carrying a balance or paying interest, because there is no factor in your credit score that rewards you for going into debt. What actually happens when you carry a balance is your credit utilization goes up, which can hurt your score instead of helping it. A credit card with a $5,000 limit shows how this works. If you charge $1,000 and pay it off in full before the due date, your utilization stays low and you look responsible. Carrying that $1,000 balance month after month keeps your utilization high, though, making you look like you're relying on credit, which can actually lower your score. The thing people are doing to improve their credit is actually making it worse, and they're paying interest for the privilege of damaging their own scores. The credit card companies know this. They know people believe the myth, and they're not exactly rushing to correct it. Think about it from their perspective. If you're a bank and half your customers are voluntarily paying you interest because they think it's good for them, why would you spend money on advertising campaigns to tell them they're wrong? Over the last 10 years, the profit margin on credit cards has gone up by over 4 percentage points, not because people are riskier borrowers, since charge-off rates have actually stayed pretty stable, but because banks realized they could raise rates and people would keep paying. The average cardholder with a balance of about $5,300 paid an extra $250 in interest in 2023 compared to what they would have paid 10 years earlier, just because of that margin increase. Here's the thing that really gets me, though. The people who can least afford this are the ones paying the most. 56% of people earning under $50,000 a year carry a credit card balance, while for people earning over $100,000, it's only 36%. Women are more likely to carry balances than men, with 50% of female cardholders having debt compared to 43% of male cardholders. And a big reason for that is women are still earning about 81 cents for every dollar men make. So when you're earning less, you're more likely to need credit just to cover basic expenses like groceries and childcare. Let me tell you about what this actually looks like in someone's life with a real example. You buy a laptop for $1,400 because you need it for work or school or whatever. You put it on your card because you don't have the cash right now, and you figure you'll pay $100 a month until it's paid off. With a 23% interest rate, which is pretty standard right now, paying off that laptop will take you 17 months, and you'll pay $245 in interest. That's 15% of the laptop's price, which means you paid almost $1,500 for a $1,400 computer just because of interest. Now imagine that's happening with multiple purchases like groceries, car repairs, and medical bills. All these things adding up on your card and accumulating interest and taking years to pay off. This is why 61% of people with credit card debt have been in debt for at least a year, why 18% have been in debt for over 5 years, and why 22% don't think they'll ever get out of credit card debt. Ever, meaning they've just accepted it as a permanent part of their financial life. Here's where the mindset shift happens, though, because credit cards are not the enemy and can actually be incredibly useful tools. They help you build credit, which you need for things like renting an apartment or getting a mortgage. They offer fraud protection, and a lot of them have rewards programs. The problem isn't the card itself, but the myth. The problem is people thinking they need to pay interest to get the benefits. You can use a credit card every single day and never pay a penny in interest as long as you pay off the full balance before the due date. And that's it. That's the whole trick. You still get all the credit building benefits because the credit bureaus still see that you're using credit responsibly. Your payment history still looks good, your credit utilization stays low because you're paying it off, and everything works exactly the way it's supposed to.
The only difference is you're not giving the bank free money. I get it, though. Sometimes life happens and you can't pay off the full balance because of a medical emergency, or your car breaks down, or you lose your job, and there are real situations where you need to carry a balance temporarily, which is what credit is actually for. That's different from strategically carrying a balance because you think it's helping your credit score, which is just lighting your money on fire. What does this actually look like in practice, though? First, if you're currently carrying a balance because you thought it was good for your credit, stop right now, because there's no benefit and you're just paying interest for nothing. Pay off the balance right now if you can, or if you can't, make a plan to pay it off as quickly as possible, because even an extra $50 or $100 a month makes a huge difference. Second, going forward, treat your credit card like a debit card by only charging what you can afford to pay off that month, and then pay it off in full before the due date. Set up automatic payments if you need to, because a lot of people miss the due date not because they don't have the money, but because they just forgot, and then they get hit with late fees and interest charges.
Third, if you're worried about your credit utilization showing up on your report, here's a trick. Credit card companies report your balance to the credit bureaus on your statement closing date, which is usually about 3 weeks before your payment is actually due. Paying off your card before the statement closes means the balance that gets reported will be lower, and you'll still get a statement and still have a payment due, but that lower reported balance helps your score. This is especially useful if you're about to apply for a mortgage or a car loan and you want your credit score to be as high as possible. Look, I know this stuff can feel overwhelming because we're taught from a young age that credit is complicated, that you need to be strategic about it, that there are all these rules and tricks you need to know. The truth is pretty simple, though. Use credit, pay it back on time, and don't carry a balance unless you absolutely have to. That's it. That's the whole game.
The banks want you to think it's more complicated than that, because complexity benefits them. And when you're confused about how credit works, you're more likely to make mistakes, and those mistakes are profitable for them. You're not confused anymore, though, because you know the myth. You know what it costs, and you know what to do instead. The next time someone tells you that you need to carry a balance to build credit, you can tell them they're wrong. You can explain how it actually works, and maybe you'll save them from paying thousands of dollars in unnecessary interest. That's what this really comes down to: information. Understanding how the system actually works instead of how people think it works. Now you understand. You're not giving away money for nothing. You're using credit the way it's meant to be used, and you're keeping your hard-earned money where it belongs, with you.